Festival, where we honor stories worth telling you, bringing you the best in new media. So if anybody's in the entertainment business, they realize how important story is, but more importantly, the relationships that you make and keep along the way. So I'm delighted that half my panel have been with me for a very long time, and the other half are new friends that I hope to be in their company for a very long time. So I'm going to introduce the panelists, and Allison will be coming in. Okay, so we'll wait for Allison. Okay, we can start, because I like to start on time. I'm from the East Coast, and Allison will just step in. Sorry, it's in your blood. So Doug Leighton from Panasonic sends his regrets, but he got a gig. Welcome to the entertainment business. We're all about empowering filmmakers moving forward, so go take that paid gig. Thank you very much. Panasonic makes a great 3D camera. All right, so Allison, come on and take your place. I'm going to introduce, we'll save the round of applause for the end, but these are fantastic people. Chuck Haifley, Allison Dollar, Kyle Schember, David Uslan. Let's give a round of applause.
So, we have a group of people here that are going to talk to us about what they do and how they do it and why they do it. We're going to start with Allison.
There you go. I'm Allison Dollar. I'm the CEO of the Interactive Television Alliance. We're a trade association just celebrating our 11th year. How we do it? Well, regular trade association. We support mostly Fortune corporations that are going into advanced television. And I guess part of our discussion will be how do you define that, especially today, given all the plethora of distribution channels there are. And why is always a good question, because it's been like banging our head against the wall for a really long time. I actually started in the early Laserdisc era, the whole transition to nonlinear editing and all that kind of stuff. So we've seen a lot of change. That had a lot of naysayers. Most of which obviously have been proved wrong, thankfully, which is why we're here today.
I'm Kyle Schember. I'm the CEO of a company called Subtractive Inc. We're a production company, and we've been in business for 8 years, and we were just talking about, it was a very interesting 8 years. Like, to make it through 2009 was kind of a, anybody that was left standing I'm actually proud of it. We're still here. But we do production services from concept to completion, but we also do our own content as well. And we actually do something on ITV, oddly enough, so that's me.
Hi everybody, my name is David Uslan, and I'm head of development for our family's production companies, Bat Film Productions and Brandon Entertainment, where we produce all the Batman films and National Treasure movies and Constantine and a whole bunch of other big comic book based and literary based content. I'm also head of business development for a company called Graphically, which is one of the global leaders in digital distribution of literary content. So we handle all of the ebook conversion, digital distribution for about 6,500 worldwide publishers, everybody from Random House and Scholastic on down, DC Comics, Marvel, Dark Horse, and that's what I do.
No, thank you. I'm Chuck Haifley. We have had studios and rental companies and production companies for the last 30 years. Live production, like Don King Productions, Bon Jovi videos, DVDs. And then we've kind of gone into the new media, which is supporting what you guys do, providing either gear, lenses, cameras, support, stages, that kind of thing. And then just trying to help out the new feature. Susan worked with us, was our executive producer, manages stages, does all kinds of different things with us. And she's put you guys together, and you're the future. This is where it's going. And it's from 3D to, your iPhone. And it's all media's in between. So that's kind of the direction we're doing. And any questions you guys have for any one of us, we'll start answering. Any questions? Okay.
Question for Allison. You had this organization for 11 years. 11 years ago, what was anybody thinking? Interactive television.
Yeah, well, actually there were trials of ITV back in the 80s, well, late 70s.
Really?
In the 80s. Time Warner did some famous trials in the early 90s. We had a click to buy Pizza Hut, Time Warner Cable in Hawaii in the 90s. So a lot of those kind of things were already going on. They mostly were cable-centric. So when we started, it was the multi-system operators. And then there's a whole ecosystem there, a middleware in the set-top box, which allowed for different transactions. So I think originally what everyone was thinking was a hardware solution, which is why I was saying the Laserdisc and CDI and all that early stuff. You remember all the old PC kind of based things, and then the living room, the set-top box, and then now, of course, it's migrated to what other devices you have that are also mobile and coming from the cloud.
Yeah.
And that's where all the business discussion is based, because it's really about using that back channel for a transaction, and it can be something else. It can be social interaction, but there's data that goes along with it. And so the argument tends to be, to these guys' point, who's paying for that, how are the brands supporting it, who gets to own the content versus the actual transaction and the data. And so for a creative community, the implication there is that all of you have to, if you are on the production side, producing side, have to be really cognizant of return on investment in a way that wasn't true back in the days when somebody else would take care of distribution for you. It's really kind of all that's all gone away.
One of the questions I have in this business is when you produce something and you're looking for a way to distribute it, and I'm talking about over the internet, through individual country sales, through television production sales, how do you know you're going to get paid? And because in our industry, a lot of times media goes out there, it's stolen, it's taken from you, it gets distributed without you making any money on it. And that's kind of the area that I think everybody that's in this industry needs to have a return on their investment by knowing they're going to get paid for what their media is when it's sold, when it's marketed, when it's viewed. And
I think graphically, I mean, you have an interesting model.
Yeah, I mean, graphically, I love the digital space in general. I come from a household of comic book geeks, and I'm the type of kid who, always went to the comic book store every Wednesday to buy my comic books. And because of the world that I grew up in, I'm so close to so many great creators and illustrators and writers out there. And in the digital space, you have so much more freedom to be creative, to do what you want to do. You have so many options now to exploit and distribute your content. And I'm just talking about literary content here. So with all these devices that are out now, from the iPad to the Nook to the Kindle to the Kobo, through your laptop and desktop, through mobile devices, you have all these amazing ways to distribute your content now. And you can make that content so interesting. Instead of just picking up, a book or a comic book where you see just the typical panel layout that, we all have seen before, you can make this stuff interactive now. You can make it engaging. You can hit such a wide demo that, that material traditionally isn't accustomed to. And it just really opens up the floodgates. So with my company, with Graphically, we not only work with thousands of publishers, we work with tens of thousands of independent professional creators who chose to distribute their content themselves without working with a publisher or giving up any rights. And as long as you have some marketing skills and you know how to talk up your product and do what you need to do to bring that spotlight to it, it's just such an interesting space, and that's where everything's going. And I think I read last week that that last month was the first time that tablets outsold laptops worldwide. And the direction that we're going in general, I think is just going to give creators and again artists, illustrators, just so many more opportunities, and that's why I love that space. And that kind of goes into creative control as well. You know, from a production standpoint, from a creative, a development standpoint, when you're working in the digital space with companies like a Hulu or a Netflix or companies like that, you tend to have a lot more creative control than working with the traditional studios and networks out there. And from somebody who represents and options and controls source material and underlining intellectual properties, and somebody who's close with those creators, I love that creative control.
Yeah, I think we're actually in the last phase of kind of a golden age of that creative control, because of course it's all getting aggregated by the big players. I mean, once you have YouTube and having maker studios and then having VidCon and starting to buy channels and all that sort of stuff. It's like anything else. You got your rebels, they get in there, some people do well, and then big business moves in, and that's kind of where...
Well, and the other thing is the second screen, and that's interesting, which is newer, and I was learning about that and realized that I was already doing it without knowing too much about it, because the second screen is when you're watching television, your iPad's in your lap, and you're doing stuff on that, and you're kind of half watching TV, and you've got a second screen. What happens on that second screen? And now there's a whole new opportunity to create interactivity with your second screen, because they were originally thinking, well, let's integrate all this stuff to TV so you can look at that lamp and buy it and click on it. But no, it's actually more about what you're actually focused or half focused on in your second screen. And then there's a whole new level of content that can be created to interact with the content that you're watching.
There's many, many tools to do that now too, which actually make it a real business. And there's the Second Screen Summit is going on now. There's a lot of again, whenever on our side the bigger corporations come in, and that means the creative community has really got to hustle, because otherwise to break out of the clutter and make a living doing it, much less be wealthy doing it. You have to have a broader range of business skills than was true in the past. And I think you could speak to this on the brand side, because the brands are shifting all their dollars over, like a big proportion just from year over year in the last 3 years. It's finally done that tipping point where they're shifting it over from traditional broadcast buys into digital, into second screen support for other kind of software.
Let's talk about how long and what the length of pieces that you produce to go on the internet would be. I mean, what's the typical length of a feature or a episode, and then follow it through with how do you get paid for that?
Well, the interesting thing is the pay scale isn't necessarily relative to the length.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying, what is that length that, let's say you're producing a product that's going to go out on the internet, it's going to go VOD, pay-per-view.
Generally, it's a range. You'll have, in commercial sides, you'll have a 2-minute, a 90, a 60, and a 10, or a 15. So, and that's an average.
Yeah, but you're doing
longer
episode
content.
Let's say you're doing a 5-minute episode or 10-minute episode.
Yeah, I'd say everything's under 15, for episodic.
Okay, so now you do a 15-minute episode, and then you produced it. How do you monetize it?
In my world, most of the stuff that we do is sponsored. So it's sponsorship driven with the money up front to wrap around either a product or integrate it, or that's been the best way. I work a lot with various artists, and I'm starting to do more because music artists and things like that are looking for that exact answer. Like, how do we create something that's either episodic or a feature centered around our album? They're looking at new revenue streams. And I have to say, I don't know that anybody's really cracked that code. We want to experiment with like a Vimeo model where you get 90-10. There's a new company that I just met the guy last night that he is charging a subscription fee for $9.99. You can put you can put whatever you want out there, keep 100% of it. There's a lot of, it's a Wild West, to be honest. And the distribution, I don't think it's been sorted out. And even with like Sony's Crackle and things like that, they haven't figured it out. If the big guys aren't figuring it out, I don't know that there's an answer. And I don't think it's one answer. I think there's a multitude of ways, and I think it's coming. It's forthcoming. I don't know that in my world, we've not generated a whole fistful of cash by putting stuff out there, other than ad revenue. That's
what's one of the things you've done recently that you really enjoyed?
That I've enjoyed?
That was really successful.
That's a good question. I work a lot with Snoop, and I really enjoy working with him. It's fun. He's a rolling comedian 24/7, and we are concepting some ways to use an A-list talent to litmus test a lot of these platforms. That's what we want to do, because if you've got stuff like that that you can do, we can create content fairly inexpensively and then test these models, because he has a built-in audience, he has good social media, and we can actually go and try video. That's one of the things who's comfortable paying money to Vimeo? Everyone's comfortable giving money to Apple, everyone's comfortable giving money to Amazon. Vimeo, I don't know. I don't know that it's a huge amount of people are like, yeah, sure, I'll give you my credit card and I'll do this. So I think it's an evolution, and I don't think we're 100% there yet, at least in my experience. But we are prepared to create content to go litmus test these platforms. Outside of YouTube and AdShare, I haven't really had any major experience and or success in just like, here's my thing, I've put it up online, and here come my magical checks in the mail. I haven't got to that point.
Well, there's all these smart TVs that have enabled with, Zoom, and I mean, there's all kinds of different things on the smart TVs you can place your programs on and share revenues with them. Has that worked for anybody? Have you guys had any success in that area? Have you produced programs and been able to get on any of these platforms and had any kind of money return? That's what I'm really looking for. Because we're all going to spend our efforts and our time and our money to make things. What are we going to get for it? And it's not
I think it's
big.
still really early days on that.
That's kind of what I'm saying. I think it's just...
Because, for one thing, if you look at it, are you doing something as a labor of love because you are an artist or an artiste, depending on, your personality? And are you doing long form, and is it drama or sort of on the spectrum to like farcical comedy? Because some of them lend themselves, some of those genres and actually tone lend themselves better to these environments. For instance, comedy, you can often do bloopers and outtakes and little short clips of jokes, and they can be chopped up and used in other environments where people are doing mashups, right? Or snap cuts or snap clips, there's all these kind of things. They work out really well that way. Demand Media, Zephyr, which is a studio effort to do clips and trailers that you mix and match. That's really different than a serious drama where you really have to watch the through line of the narrative, and you need to have all of the build and the three acts and the whole thing. So the matching the technology, and this is why it's so much more difficult than it used to be, because you have to match the distribution and the business model actually to the context of the content. Is it something that lends itself to sponsorship or not? Not everything does, might be crass and ruin what you're trying to do. Sometimes it ties in really well if you're doing something fun and funky and you want to see if Red Bull's going to sponsor it. So.
Well, to get a sponsor, you have to have distribution, so they have to actually know that eyeballs are going to see it, or they're not going to give you any money. So it's kind of a chicken-egg thing. But you had a question.
Yeah, I have a question. Patrick Cady with CredibleInformation.com. I wondered, have any of you had experience with, or what your opinion is of location-based advertising or proximity-based advertising? So, someone watches some of your content, and depending on where they are, their GPS signal on their mobile device, then your advertisers can hit them. They opt into this service, obviously, but then your advertisers can hit them with, there's a discount at this coffee shop, right around the block.
That's a program you're going to have to write.
That's not a model.
That's an app. We have an app that does that, like around you, and then the sponsors come in individually. That'd be a brilliant idea, because you could, right when they're watching it, right around it, that ties in. Let's say you're wine tasting and you're talking about, the different wines, and the stores right around you are selling the same wine and advertising it, or the same kind of food, or if you're a food network, But as individuals, we're all trying to produce stuff. We're using cameras from, shooting 4K down to shooting a 5D or whatever kind of things we're shooting on. Whatever it is, you're going to spend money to do it. I just want to know how we're going to make money back and see if we can all kind of get together as a group. Maybe there's an app that tracks this, because when it's out there on these networks, on the internet, it can go anywhere. but you really never know what's happening with it or who's making money from it. Everybody else is making money from your videos. How do we make money from it? And I think that's the group here as new media. How do we make our own money from it and keep it from everybody else stealing it?
Just to chime in there for a second, even though this is a little bit different but kind of similar, talking about location-based. From the publishing literary side, we did a project with around Cowboys and Aliens when that movie came out. And we did an app for that movie around the original Cowboys and Aliens graphic novel, and partnered with Barnes & Noble, where when you brought in your Nook into a Barnes & Noble and downloaded the app, it would give you all kinds of exclusive content that you would only get once you were in the walls of a Barnes & Noble. And they promoted it in the store, and it was a really successful test for us to show that, depending on how you're doing it, on what kind of promotion you get, on what type of device you're using, it can be successful. You can excite a buyer into actually coming and buying something and engaging with that content, depending on what it is. AMC is another example. I know that, without going into too much detail, that, AMC is for a while now been talking to specific content providers about, coming into your AMC theater for a movie, downloading certain content and being able to unlock a whole bunch of great things that are exclusive only when you're within that theater. So depending on the content, location-based can be cool if it's done right.
Yeah, I think, well, how many of you do already have a presence on YouTube or some other permanent channel for yourselves? And how many of you are just independent, looking for more traditional distribution? Well, so they're very, very different conversations, and those are very different businesses. The location-based entertainment, there's Premier Retail Networks, which was bought out. There's a lot of in there, gas station TV and all sort of thing. But to Chuck's point, most of the time it's still big media that's done the regular media buying and packaging, and they're just using the traditional broadcast eyeballs, brand awareness, versus actually looking for engagement. There's, though, but on the LB, there's also augmented reality apps, which can basically, you have the app in a place that can integrate an image from the cloud so that you can see something that's not there. A la Minority Report, there's a bunch of those actually in town. There's one called Snaps, used to be called Gold Run. There's one called Telehambra, a lot of that kind. Those AR are really interesting if you have something that on your side that is can be related to a product. But I don't think that there is a direct path to making money in the ways that it's still the same thing where either you're going to get a lot of eyeballs and you have to do that through social media and engagement that you do through building up basically a fan base before you even have a conversation and distribution. And that's really what's changed. What used to be, you go to the festival, they like it, okay, they take it, they market it for you, then you get a fan base, then you can leverage it. Now you have to actually do all that marketing, basically pre-sale, and get a following to make it work.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
How does the 3D pads that are coming out are going to affect you and your games, your animation, and that type of thing? Because there'll be 3D type iPads and different media that's done in a 3D manner. The glassesless pads will probably be the future.
I have to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of 3D. I mean, it's
Well,
not.
I'm not talking about 3D in the theaters. I'm
No, I
talking
know,
about
but even in the past, I mean,
for animation, like the Batman series or whatever these comics in a 3D scope like that is really what it's going to be targeted at. It's going to be games and animation.
I mean, it's whatever the consumer wants, whatever is popular with those consumers, you're going to see. With content, with especially, again, like literary underlying source material content, people are going to adapt it however they can to draw eyeballs. And, you've already seen that over the last couple of years with people taking comic books and just releasing them digitally, just having a digital version and making that digital version interactive. turning it into what we sometimes call motion comics, where you take the flat illustrations, break the layers down, add an animation, and almost turn it into like a little bit of an animated series based on that original artwork. Some of you may have seen what DC Comics and Marvel Comics have done with some of their motion comics over the last couple of years. So I think that it's whatever the consumer wants. Obviously, it's heading more and more into that 3D arena. I, like you, am not a huge fan of 3D. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it's beautiful. Other times I think it just gets in the way. But I think you're just going to see content being adapted in every which way to hit the desires of whoever that consumer is going to be.
In video games, I think it's good. I mean, especially in the left eye, right eye, where you're concealing different gameplay from, it may not even be, it may be 2D, 3D, where you're the picture in the face. I like that kind of stuff. But to me, 3D overall seems like an upsell across the board. It's like, and now in 3D, who cares? Like, it's got to be a good story. It's got to be good.
Yeah, but I'm talking about on your little screen.
I don't care.
It's interactive.
I got to be honest. I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care.
Does anybody else
That's just
out there care? No? So nobody cares about that, but that's the
Holograms, yes.
Yeah, it's similar to a hologram popping out of your.
Like it's just a right, no screen, just to be there.
And we are putting a lot of holograms around different places, I mean, there's at the Midway in San Diego, we just shot something so that when you go down and visit the museum in the Midway in San Diego, you'll be seeing all the officers and the people that were in the war and everything else talking about it, and that'll be holograms. We're putting holograms in Las Vegas because there's fees for performance fees there. So instead of having a performance fee, they may have 5 mariachis singing happy birthday to you, and one of them's real and the rest of them are holograms.
To our point is that all of it's being basically infused with marketing in one way or another, and that's location-based experiential marketing, and all of that rest of the technology will be brought to bear to enhance that experience, and that's a great example where you wouldn't not want, if you have a mariachi, you want them in 3D.
Well, yeah, that'd be a hologram.
If you're going to go that far, you want it to.
And then
And
there's a-
especially Vegas or any of those, but that all ties back into, again, shopping. And I mean, we're a consumer culture, and or even just other aspects like science museums. I know we're using a lot of that immersive environment where it really matters that you're literally bombarded versus following a storyline. But I think that again, does that fit the model perfectly? It does. Well, that's how they're going to make their money off of that content, by having it more compelling by being in 3D.
I think I'm talking about the holograms where they're making money because they're not having to pay a fee for the other artists. And if one artist is there, it appears, and then he can interact with you, say your name, and make interact with the other holograms and act like it's real. But I mean, that's not really anything you guys are doing for content, creation. It's just kind of a future of what's happening in different production areas where you're going to create all this. That's a new market for creating programming.
Well, it's really easy to get lost because there's so much going on, and as Allison said, there's multiple different solutions for whatever it is that you're doing. And for me, I like to just stay in a creative space to start and get really good product. And I think that it's easy to get lost and say, hey, I made this thing, and you're so focused on the end result that it does take full attention to make really, and you would appreciate this too, I mean, to just stay in a creative space and actually create something that is worthwhile. And that's key. And then, I mean, and whatever you don't know, go find somebody that does. I mean, it's difficult as a CEO or any person, not any one person or any one company has the only solution. There's a zillion, and it's going to be a constant evolution. It's a change that's going to always be changing. I don't think there's never going to be something there, you just upload a video, you get 90% and we're done. It's never that easy. And no matter how good, once you've created that awesome piece of content, you can have the greatest thing in the world, and that's when you transition into everyone needs to know about it, because you can have the best CD on the shelf, and if you can't see it or no one knows about it, it's going to sit there.
One thing that I have seen, again, from the literary publishing side, a couple years ago when Graphically started, we had our own apps out there. So we developed our own iOS app, we developed our own Android app, and within that app, we actually sold content. So we would take all of our publishers' content and sell it within our own kind of digital store. And within a couple years, and I knew this was going to happen, that store became so overwhelmed with content, just like we're talking about. All of a sudden you're talking about, 15, 20,000 different pieces of IP all within a little app. And, if you weren't the biggest company there, whether it was a DC comic or a Marvel comic, nobody was going to see your content. And I look at all this content, I see great properties. Beautifully illustrated properties, stuff that can make great animated shorts or series, make a great traditional TV show or feature film, but nobody saw it. And it was kind of heartbreaking. And our company had to take the pivot, and instead of focusing on our apps, we shuttered those apps, and we started focusing more on the ebook stores out there and helping our clients get into the iBook store and all that good stuff. But it really just comes down to marketing, and that's really what it comes down to. And you need to have that ability to talk a good game and to go and talk to the right people, spread that word. It's all word of mouth. Whether it's digital or whether it's, traditional literary content or whatever, going back to the dawn of time, it's all been about word of mouth. And you need to be able to get out there and be passionate about what you're doing. It's an uphill battle. I think we've all talked about that here. This whole thing is just one giant uphill battle. But if you're passionate about what you're doing, and if you have great content, and I think most of us, knows what great content is. If it's engaging, again, you were talking about, putting it up against other great content that you appreciate, and if it's kind of on the same level, you have something good. But you gotta be passionate about it. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. And, but if you put your heart and soul into it, and again, if you know how to talk about it the right way and know how to market yourself, then you got a better shot than most people out there.
So in the new media market, what do you guys need? What do you want and what do you need for you as you see it? You're the guys making it.
I'll grab the mic, and if someone wants to, I can walk out as far as I can walk out.
Does anyone want to ask a question on the mic? I don't know how far I can walk. Probably not that far, but this is good enough.
Susan needs a wireless mic.
I do, but that's okay. How about if I, yes?
I have a question regarding distribution and numbers. If you're out there marketing your product and you're starting to get numbers, is there a magic number on the distribution end that we need to come to you with our content, with our subscribers and whatnot, that you would be interested in talking to us?
From my point of view,
Yes.
from my humble opinion, numbers do matter. So if somebody came to me and said, I have a digital comic book series that got 1 million views over, a couple months or whatever it is, then it's something that will, that I'll pay attention to. But then again, I'm all about the material, and I see a lot of original content that nobody has seen, or something that's gone out digitally, but again, nobody has bought it. And it's great. And I know that it's great. And it's something that I want to pay attention to and devote the time necessary to help package and do the right way, bring in my distribution partners and my contacts that help support it. So again, it all comes down to the content. If you have great content, then it'll speak for itself. Eyes always help, but it's all about the content.
You'd probably, Allison, be best to answer what it takes.
Well, YouTube, when they start taking interest in you, it usually is upward at least high six figures. In traditional broadcast media, that was one of the whole things about ITV, why I'll take it so long, actually, why we started the organization, because everything's so siloed, right? You have your distribution, your technology, your content, your advertisers, and a lot of times their own incentives are at odds with one another. So it used to be that they wanted, 25 million households. It was pretty high. when Nancy Dennis joined the ITA from Kraft, she had said she would rather have 10 million relationships than 100 million eyeballs. So it's all gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. So part of the numbers are you gotta get them just as high up as you can. So for the ad buys, because the advertising, or at least attract a sponsorship if it's a niche topic, let's just say, some kind of a environmentally friendly message or characters in your piece, right? And then some other sponsor that wants to be affiliated with that affinity group of people that are green might come in. Then you start getting these ratcheted up conversations. Or you can try to be just some other piece of it that's either maybe controversial or going to attract attention topically, that can go viral through whatever your efforts are on Twitter and all your social media efforts. And a lot of times I find that creators are not necessarily always their own best spokesperson, to your guys' point. So sometimes if there's a person on your team who just is naturally more outgoing or has a real way with the pithy little words, and let them do the tweeting. You don't have to do everything yourself all the time. You might even have, somebody in your family that's going to pitch in and help, depending on where you are on your budgeting. But the interest gets there either if you already have followers, if you get a sponsor, even if it's a regional or local sponsor, or you get upwards into the millions. But the scale of what's counted as a channel has compressed from where it used to be. Because broadcast TV, you had 200 plus million households, and you could have a share of like 70, which is unheard of now, right? So it's smaller and smaller levels of people who watch. Even Mad Men, you'd be surprised how small the millions are that watch. It's not anything like it used to be.
Well, I have an 18-year-old daughter, and her groups don't watch TV. They watch everything on an iPad or everything on their phones, and their attention span is about 5 or 6 minutes on anything they do. So the future is watching it on your iPad, watching it on your phone, and having it, designed so that all these kids that are sending it everywhere spend their amount of time that they're going to do, and you feed their frenzy. They get into a frenzy, and then it goes viral in a school, just in a high school. Within days, they created something amongst themselves, and then everybody in the school has seen it. It's a whole new world, and that's really what your new media is. It's a attention span of 5 minutes, maybe. There's a program that they use for music, that if you like something, it finds things that like it. There are similar songs. What is that? Pandora. So what if we had a Pandora for videos? And when you're watching Pandora or watching the videos, you do the same kind of thing. You put in your show and it starts popping up the same kind of content that you like.
That's happening, actually. Yeah. I mean, in several platforms.
Vidora.
Yeah, exactly. They are, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier. It's like, it's going to be an ever-changing landscape. That's the one thing we can count on, is that it's always going to be evolving and always be changing. And we, to your point, and to my point, is like, it's easy to get lost in that and focus on actually doing really great content that you're passionate about, that you can stand by and say, yeah, and as you said, speak for itself. And for me, in my perspective, it's not that I don't want to deal with it, but to your point, it takes a village, to really get around a particular. I don't know anyone who's just the one person that goes and shoots it, makes it, writes it, distributes it, and that's a lot. Everything's a job for.
We're all capable of doing that today.
Yeah, and it does happen. YouTube's a good example of that. They're their own thing. I know a lot of the YouTubers. I know a lot of the really popular YouTubers. We work with them. We've helped them figure out some special effects and things like that they wanted to do. And it's interesting to watch people with zero production background evolving into production, and that's been interesting too, because I have a friend that just did a movie called Channeling, and it was at the LA Film Festival, and it was about everyone broadcasting from a contact lens, and are we headed in that direction? It was a great social commentary on all of the new media to say, people were losing themselves and just becoming their own channel, and channeling and broadcasting their entire life, like the fusion of reality into that. And I didn't mean to do an ad for my friend's film, that was kind of lame. But it is a good movie, and it is topical to this point that, I think connecting your passion, and to your point, if you are a good spokesperson and maybe you're not a great content maker, go find some people that make great content and help them. And if you are a great storyteller and an awesome illustrator, animator, or writer, focus on what you're actually highly, evolved, or what you're good at doing, and then build a team. That's what I think, because it is an ever-changing,
Any other
ever-growing
questions
thing.
out there?
We basically have two issues, which is that the tools are making it easier and easier for anybody without a lot of training to actually become pretty proficient in editing and even, adding effects and doing all this stuff. There's a lot of collaborative online, like WeVideo, all that kind of stuff is going on. So at the same time that's easier entry into the market, it also means the explosion of the number of properties, which we're seeing, and it means it all gets commoditized in terms of value, right? So that's where you just either decide that you're going to do a lot and break through, what path you're going to go on the marketing side versus your own focus. That'd be a question.
Yeah, just out of curiosity for you guys, do you think it is better to specialize in one thing? For example, when you're just talking about, like, if you're a writer, if you're a marketing director, whatever you want to do you think it's better to more specialize in one thing, or do you think it would be more beneficial to try to harness everything and edit it yourself, direct yourself, write it yourself?
I believe that everything is a job for a reason, and that it's kind of a split answer, because I think there are certain people that can do all well. For me, I knew that I could do certain things well, and that I wanted to surround myself with people that excel to the level that I did with what I do, and meet me and team it, and like really be like, okay, we're a great collaboration. We work well together. It's an enjoyable experience, because I think, to your point, connecting to your passion is really all that matters. Like, if you're passionate about doing whatever it is that you're doing all day, every day, you don't work a day in your life. You hear that all the time, and it's true. And it is great to know a lot of skill sets, because in a dark hour, at 2 a.m. when a client needs something in 4 hours and everyone's gone, it's good to know how to edit, or be able to get that thing out of the machine. So like on a base level, I would say it's good to know a lot of skill sets, but whatever you're attracted to and whatever you're really passionate about and enjoy doing with most of your time is probably the focus. Does that answer your question?
Well, that's kind of where I was headed with this, because my point is that, so these tools are becoming easier and easier. So fortunately, that means there's going to be less barrier to entry to be able to express yourself. It's not going to be as hard of a ramp up in order to express yourself, as the tools will be transparent and be so simple to go straight in. But really, the bifurcation point of decision making is, what is your aim and your purpose of doing it in the first place? Some of these people on YouTube, they just want to be a reality star. Not really the same thing as somebody else wanting to communicate the pain of growing up as an only child or something, right? So that's something to be cognizant of your own personal motivation. What do you want to do? Do you want to become wealthy? Do you want to feel like you're connected to other people? Do you have something to say? Are there issues you want to explore? Are you an activist first? Why are you even doing it in the first place?
I think focus is important. If you're a writer and you focus and you're the best writer there is, they will seek you out. If you're the best DP, they will seek you out. If you know a little bit of everything, that's great for the whole team. But in that team, there's a guy that's the expert or a girl that's the expert at what she does or he does, and that separates them from everybody else. When you're focused, a professional champion, a world champion in anything is focused on what they're doing, and they're the best at it in the world, and then people seek you out.
Well, every different skill set, like DP, for example. Cameras are coming out every 5 minutes. There's probably one that just came out while we were sitting here. So it's like, it's a full-time job just to keep up. And one thing that I struggle with, I surround myself with millennials and people that hire young people in my company, because I need to know what's going on. I don't have time for that. and to stay in touch and to keep up with all the cameras and all the stuff and the filters and the different lenses, and that's a full-time job in and of itself. And there's people that are media that write about it, that keep you informed and things like that. But and that's true for editing. It's true for computing. Apple just came out with a new tower finally. Like we've all been waiting 6 years for that. And to know, because when you do have that knowledge, it is power because you're ahead of everyone else.
One of the things that's happening is with raw recordings, and whether it's going to go 4K and they're giving you a raw recording. As a DP, you don't have to do anything anymore.
Like a hologram camera.
It records, just raw recording of like a F55, Sony F55s or the new Red Epics, and you're recording raw. Your decisions on how it's going to look on the set is really the only decision you're making. Everything else is being recorded raw, and then in post is where you look at it. So it's going to get easier and easier in that aspect. But then, do you shoot in 4K because 4K is the future, and you protect the future, or do you shoot with your 5D because it's cheap to go to do this, and you can do the whole thing yourself? There's so many variables. But eventually you won't have to know all of them, because with the raw recordings, all the data will be there.
And that kind of begs the question of what's the difference between new media and just media that's evolving at a high rate of speed. And I would suggest, obviously, my bias is that it's interactivity and organically embedding other kinds of, even if it's only on the marketing side, other kinds of engagement and interaction into what your end product is. And not to say, but clearly you're not going to have people voting on your ending if you have a beautiful lyrical narrative film, but that when you now have such a digital distribution base, then it is all new all the time. And again, as Chuck said, even on the hardware side, in the living room, you've got chipsets, LG and Samsung embedding 3D chips right there, and then on the remote control becoming more like a tablet, and all those things fusing on the hardware side. Well, that affects distribution deals too, and that's why there's all the people suing each other all the time of who has the rights, the must carry, and all that stuff.
And do you separate all the rights? There's broadcast, and there's internet rights, and there's VOD, and there's pay-per-view, and that's all different media channels. And then it's separated by country. You may be able to do it in territory, sell it domestically or sell it internationally, sell it in high def, sell it in 3D, sell it in HD, sell it in SD. There's all different kinds of markets that you can compartmentalize and make money from each section of it. But who's doing all that? And who's checking on it?
Well, and also a lot of the things that were maybe typically flat 2D print are also becoming animated or being composited with a mixture of true mixed media with film and image and all that stuff. I'm sure you've seen it on yours.
The legal process is tougher than it's ever been right now, with all this stuff. And you have to be so careful when you're doing any kind of rights deal nowadays, whether it's with a publisher or a studio or a financier, whomever it is. And unfortunately, I've seen so many great creators and rights holders stumble and fall in this area because they don't have the right protection. They don't have the right entertainment attorney. They don't have, they just don't know. And because of that, a lot of these guys get stuck in deals that they wish they never got involved in the first place. And you just see that more and more now because of all these different opportunities. And that's why no matter what you do, no matter what type of content you're working on, you're creating, always make sure you have that right team on board, especially in the protection area, and make sure you have a good attorney. Make sure you have good representation if you have representation. And with me, I was blessed because I was born in a household where my father, even though he chooses not to admit it, is a copyright attorney. So, everything that I did, I had my father right there behind me going, with his red marker, and nope. So whatever you need to do, just make sure that you have that right protection. That's probably the most important when you get down to it.
Maybe there should be an app, again, tells you where the rights are, and you check off who you're going to give the rights to, what territories, what rights they're getting, and it'd be very simple that way. You could be boilerplate with a lawyer, but you don't actually have to have lawyers, because sometimes when we're creating, you create a 5-minute piece, you can't spend $10,000 on a lawyer to protect you. You only spent $10,000 on the entire project. So somebody write this app.
Well, the 4As in A&A have Ad ID, which is basically like a digital watermarking, way oversimplified, but it's a format for marking pieces of ads and content as they go through the system for workflow and asset management. And so I think that all of those kind of solutions are migrating into the chain, to your point, where you will be able to know exactly where it is and where it ended up and who's consuming it, and if they, the same way you can, not even with cookies, you just regular data, did you click on the ad or not? And I think it's going to happen for the rest of non-interactive content is all going to be thrown into the maw of the system and digested, and it's all going to be tracked just the same way.
I like when you've done an ad and you go to watch it on YouTube and you have to watch an ad to go see your ad. I think that's funny. There's going to be a lot more of that.
5-minute warning.
What are we going to do for 5 minutes, Susan?
I think words of wisdom. Maybe.
Words of wisdom.
I have a question.
Okay.
Back here, sorry,
Okay.
you can see me. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about marketing? Like, besides just marketing it yourself, on all the Twitter, Facebook, like all that stuff, are there companies or people that do basically marketing for web series, and where would we find those people or those companies? Can you just speak a little bit about that?
There's several, and I think that, again, back to what it is that you're doing, what is the content, and what type of marketing do you need? Because if it's sports related, there's companies that are awesome at that. And they're fairly easy to find. There's long lists of them, but even just Google searching, anywhere, and you can find them. But target market, like you were saying too, because these markets are well defined and base, they may even want to partner with you on some things. I've found that before too, because the lines are blurring between, production and marketing and everything. It's all kind of going into one place. And I have clients that have marketing companies that we end up doing stuff even for them and their clients and things, but it is targeted to, I would say go with a company over an individual unless somebody's just a complete rock star and I don't know that person. I wish I did. But figure out what your content's based on and go for that.
But marketing for what? Are you talking about marketing your program
Yeah.
to the internet or to advertisers, to sponsors?
Like marketing a web series for an audience, like besides just doing our own like grassroots campaign, like is there someone else or a company that specializes in that?
There's several. There's also companies like Yellow Thunder that will do targeted marketing. Like if you say, I've got this video that's all about blah, and I think that's really boring. But you've got this and you need to target market it. They have algorithms and things that will share. I mean, like physically share, not fake ghost clicks or things like that to just drive numbers up, but they actually have marketing that will target market your audience. If you're like, I need lawyers that are, senior partners and whatever, they will be able to suss that out and find out the users and stuff and drive just straight up traffic. That may be another solution, more than just like marketing and getting, but it's all through, they have a sharing platform of heavy YouTube users that actually share that information with target markets, and that can be applied to anything, even children's series or whatever.
I think, just make a distinction between marketing and PR. And PR is basically a subset of marketing. Yet there's all kinds of ways to buy lists and target, and even Google AdSense you can buy to target certain demographic if you think your content's going to be more received by a particular demographic. And there's a lot of startups in that arena, like PageWoo, where you can go and buy your own media and buy your own target. But to do a campaign, creative campaign, even a little PR boutique, they're very well versed because you can do creative where you have a hook and a tagline and do a campaign, and it can mix in advertising and also other things like, even speaking engagements or whatever that might be. and the social media aspect. And pretty much all of them do the social part for you now too. So everybody kind of has to, in that world, has to do that now.
My 2 cents, I think, I agree with everything that everybody said here, but, grassroots is still, I think, the most important thing. And, you have to, again, spend the time that's necessary, use all these different tools to your advantage, keep up the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, get out there to festivals like this festival, to South by Southwest, to Comic-Con, to places like that, meet as many people as you can, knock on as many doors as you can, use those relationships and those friendships to help spread the word. And again, if you are passionate and if you spend the time, then you will see success if you keep that up. And that's something that I tell every creator that I work with.
I think since we're in the new media format, all these things that you're asking, that's a career. There's a career in doing exactly what you just asked. Being an expert at this and marketing new media to other companies, to advertising agencies, to individual, instead of just counting on everybody else to do it, I think it's places that we can pick up right now and start companies that do this in this new media. It's well needed.
That's a good piece of advice. Don't be deluded to think that any one person, one company, or one thing is like an end-all solution. I like a lot of people have that disease. No matter what it is, even if you're awesome at it, it's a lot of work. And if any company, person, or individual is representing that they're just your one-stop solution, it's not. I can tell you that right now. Like, everybody's got to roll their sleeves up. And, there are people that are better at it than others, but, like, it is easy to just say, hey, I've made this great thing, and now the world should appreciate me for it. And even on the large brands, I mean, if that were true, you wouldn't see any billboards for a Batman movie. And the people behind all the bus ads and bitches and stuff, there's throngs of people behind that initiative to make that happen, and that's why it goes so far and wide. So, that is something to be eyes wide open with, that it is, everything's a job for a reason, and it all does take effort, and absolutely go out there and look under every rock and be tenacious.
Can we thank these industry leaders for taking time out today? David Uslan, Kyle Schember, Allison Dollar, and Chuck Haifley, thank you. I love you and I appreciate you sharing your wisdom. Please stick around. Our second screening of web series is happening now with their Q&A, and then the morning screening series ends. Thank you for being here.
Good job. Here, hold it.